Kira Chen sat in the sterile white examination room and stared at the failed results on her datapad. The red marks covered nearly every answer she had given. Third time. This was the third time she had failed the advanced xenobiology practical exam, and her chest felt tight with frustration that had nothing to do with the thin atmosphere the other species found comfortable. The door slid open with a soft whisper. Professor Velix entered, his crystalline body refracting the harsh lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. He moved with the slow, deliberate grace of a being who had never known fear or urgency in his entire life. "Miss Chen," he said, his voice like wind chimes. "This is most unfortunate." Kira stood up too quickly. The chair beneath her made a cracking sound. She looked down and saw a fresh split in the seat where her weight had stressed the lightweight material. Again. This was the fourth chair this month. The furniture here was built for species from gentle worlds, where gravity was a suggestion rather than a constant threat. "Professor, I can explain my answers," she started. Velix held up one crystalline appendage. Light danced through it. "There is nothing to explain. Your assessment of the Valdris specimen was completely incorrect. You classified it as extremely dangerous. It is in fact harmless. A herbivore. With retractable claws," Kira said, "and camouflage capabilities. And those eyes have predator spacing." "Vestigial features from its evolutionary past," Velix replied, his tone carrying the patience of someone explaining basic concepts to a child. "Miss Chen, the Valdris has been domesticated for 12,000 standard years. Children keep them as pets across 40 systems." Kira bit her tongue. She had tried to explain before. The Valdris specimen they had shown her had muscle groups that suggested explosive speed. Its teeth, while blunt, could be modified by diet. Its behavior in the observation chamber had been wrong. It moved too carefully, too aware of its surroundings. That was not how a prey animal moved. That was how something dangerous moved when it was being watched. But she had been wrong. According to the exam, she had been wrong about everything. "And your evaluation of the environmental protocols for the Tesh swamp samples," Velix continued, pulling up another section of her exam. "You marked them as inadequate. You suggested a Class 5 containment protocol." "Miss Chen? The Tesh swamps are classified as a Class 1 biome. Minimal danger. Your suggested protocols are used for plague samples and chemical weapons." The samples showed 3 different types of bacteria that could survive in sulfuric conditions, Kira said. She heard the desperation in her own voice and hated it. The spore count was within acceptable parameters for a thriving ecosystem, Velix interrupted. "Miss Chen, I believe the problem is clear. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. You come from a place where everything is trying to kill you. This has created a psychological condition where you perceive threats where none exist. You are paranoid by the standards of civilized space." The word hit her like a physical blow. Paranoid. She had heard it whispered in the corridors, seen it in the way other students moved away from her in the cafeteria. The human who jumped at shadows. The primitive who could not adapt. "I am recommending your expulsion from the academy," Velix said. His voice was not unkind, which somehow made it worse. "However, Administrator Quelm has suggested one final opportunity. A comprehensive survival assessment. If you pass, you may continue your studies. If you fail..." He trailed off, but the meaning was clear. Kira nodded. Her throat felt too tight to speak. "The assessment will be conducted next cycle. I suggest you use the time to study civilized survival protocols, not the barbaric methods from your homeworld." Velix turned to leave, then paused. "Miss Chen, there is no shame in returning to Earth. Not every species is meant for higher education. Some are better suited for other purposes." He left. The door whispered shut behind him. Kira stood alone in the examination room. Her hands were shaking. She curled them into fists, feeling the bones beneath her skin, the dense muscle that came from evolving under crushing gravity. She was stronger than anyone else in this academy. She could survive on foods that would poison most species. She could endure temperature extremes, atmospheric variations, and G-forces that would kill the delicate creatures who now judged her intelligence. But none of that mattered, because she saw dangers they did not, because she could not turn off millions of years of evolution that screamed at her to be careful, be alert, be ready. She picked up her data pad and left the examination room. The corridor outside was busy with students moving between classes. They parted around her like water around a stone. A group of whisperkin pressed themselves against the wall as she passed. their translucent bodies flickering with nervousness. She heard one of them say something in their ultrasonic language. Her translator chip caught the words, "Deathworld or dangerous." The cafeteria was nearly empty when she arrived. She selected a protein bar from the dispenser, something fortified enough that her metabolism could actually extract nutrients from it, and found a seat in the corner. The chair groaned under her weight but held. She ate slowly, trying to ignore the stares. Dr. Thornweave entered the cafeteria, his plant-based body swaying with each step. The Chlorin professor was in conversation with Commander Brass Keen, whose arthropod form clicked and whirred as he moved. They collected their meals and found a table far from where Kira sat. She saw them glance in her direction. Thornweave said something. Brass Keen's mandibles clattered in what might have been laughter. Kira looked down at her datapad. She pulled up the study materials for the survival assessment. Chapter 1. Recognizing Safe Environments. Chapter 2. Appropriate Responses to Minor Threats. Chapter 3. Why Excessive Caution is Harmful. She read the words, but they felt wrong. Everything here felt wrong. The air was too clean, filtered of any bacteria that might build immune systems. The food was too processed, stripped of anything that might cause the slightest digestive discomfort. The entire station was wrapped in safety protocols and warning systems and cushioned corners. And yet, Kira's instincts screamed at her constantly. Something was wrong. Not with her, but with this place. With the way everyone moved through life assuming nothing would ever hurt them. With the way they built their habitats and designed their experiments and classified their dangers. On Earth, that kind of assumption got you killed. But this was not Earth. This was the Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences, orbiting the civilized world of Tender 7, where the most dangerous thing most species encountered was a strongly worded disagreement. Kira finished her protein bar. She stood up and the chair sighed with relief. She had one more cycle to prepare for an assessment designed by people who thought her survival instincts were a disability. She walked back to her quarters, past the pristine corridors and the soft lighting and the gentle students who had never known hunger or fear, or the weight of a world trying to crush them. And somewhere deep in her bones, in the parts of her brain that had been shaped by a Deathworld's brutal lessons, something whispered a warning. Not yet, but soon. The alarm that woke Kira was gentle, a soft pulse of light and a musical tone that gradually increased in volume. She had tried to adjust it to something more urgent, something that would actually wake her from the combat-ready sleep her body insisted on, but the station systems would not allow alarm sounds above a certain decibel level. Excessive noise caused stress according to the wellness protocols. She pulled herself out of bed and began her morning routine. Push-ups first, then squats, then core work. The exercise was necessary. Her muscles would atrophy in the lower gravity if she did not work them constantly. She was halfway through her third set when her communicator chimed. The message was from Administrator Quelm. All students were to report to their common areas immediately. No classes until further notice. Kira felt her heartbeat quicken. She recognized that tone. Something had happened. She dressed quickly and headed to the student common area on her level. The room was already crowded with worried students. Their voices created a buzzing anxiety that filled the space. Kira spotted a group of her xenobiology classmates clustered around a holographic display. She moved closer. "Disappeared completely," one of them was saying. A flitter, her wings trembling with agitation. Professor Velix went into the Biodome research facility yesterday evening for a routine inspection. Security logs show him entering Sector 7 Gamma at 2000 hours. He never came out. Kira felt cold. "What do you mean he never came out? Did he use another exit?" The students turned to look at her. Several of them took an unconscious step backward. The flitter's wings beat faster, a sign of nervousness in her species. "There is only one entrance to Sector 7 Gamma," another student said, a whisperkin barely visible in the light. "The security footage has been reviewed multiple times. Professor Velix entered. He did not exit, but he is not inside the sector. He is just gone." "Someone checked inside the sector?" Kira asked. "Of course," the flitter said, sounding offended. "A full security team swept the area. Nothing. No trace of him at all." Kira thought about this. A crystalline shard like Velix was not easy to hide. His body refracted light. He would be visible from multiple angles. And Sector 7 Gamma was not large. It was a controlled biodome environment, maybe 40 meters across. Sealed. Monitored. "What is in Sector 7 Gamma right now?" she asked. The students looked at each other. None of them seemed to know. Administrator Quelm appeared on the main holographic display. His bulk filled the screen. He was a graviton, a species from a high-gravity world, though nothing like Earth. His face showed concern, which was unusual. Gravitons prided themselves on emotional control. "Students and faculty," he began, his voice carrying through every speaker in the common area. "I must inform you of a concerning situation. Professor Velix of the Xenobiology Department has been reported missing. He was last seen entering Biodome Research Sector 7 Gamma at 2000 hours yesterday. Despite extensive searches, he has not been located. Security is investigating. We ask for calm and patience as we work to resolve this situation. Classes are suspended for today. Please remain in your quarters or designated common areas until further notice." The display went dark. The room erupted in nervous chatter. Kira stood still, thinking. Her instincts were screaming again. That feeling of wrongness that had been with her since arriving at the academy had suddenly grown teeth. She left the common area and headed toward the Biodome research facility. Several students called after her, warning her that the area was restricted, but she ignored them. She needed to see Sector 7 Gamma for herself. The corridor leading to the Biodome facility was empty. Security had locked down the area, but the locks were designed to keep out curious students, not someone who had grown up breaking into places on Earth to scavenge supplies. Kira bypassed the door control in less than 30 seconds. The Biodome facility was dark. Emergency lighting created pools of dim illumination. Kira moved carefully, her eyes adjusting quickly to the low light. Another Deathworld adaptation that the Academy medical staff had commented on with clinical fascination. She found Sector 7 Gamma at the end of a long corridor. Security tape marked the entrance, bright yellow and stark against the white walls. Kira ducked under it and approached the door. The entrance was transparent, allowing her to see inside. The sector was exactly as the students had described. A contained ecosystem, carefully maintained. She could see various plants from different worlds arranged in neat sections. Climate controls kept the temperature stable. Lighting systems simulated different stellar conditions. Nothing looked disturbed. Kira activated the door panel. To her surprise, it opened. Security had sealed the sector temporarily but had not changed the access codes. She stepped inside. The air was different here. Humid, rich with the smell of growing things and wet soil. Kira moved slowly, scanning the environment. Her eyes tracked every shadow, every movement of leaves in the ventilation breeze, every sound. She knelt beside the main pathway. The floor was supposed to be clean, but she could see dust. The dust had been disturbed, not by feet exactly, but by something, a dragging motion. She followed the pattern with her eyes. It led to the Valdris enclosure. Kira felt her breath catch. The Valdris, the harmless herbivore she had incorrectly assessed as dangerous. She approached the enclosure slowly. The creature was there, lying in its usual spot beneath a heat lamp. It looked peaceful, domestic, exactly as the exam materials had described. But the dust pattern led directly to this enclosure. And when Kira looked more carefully at the ground, she saw something else. Small marks like scratches, too fine for the cleaning bots to have detected. The kind of marks retractable claws might leave. She looked at the Valdris again. It opened one eye and looked back at her. For just a moment, Kira saw something in that gaze. Recognition. Intelligence. A cold, calculating awareness that had nothing to do with a domesticated pet. Then the creature closed its eye and went back to sleep. Kira backed away slowly. Her heart was pounding. She needed to report this. But report what? That she had a feeling, that the dust was disturbed, that a supposedly harmless animal had looked at her strangely. She was already on the edge of expulsion. If she made an accusation and was wrong, they would dismiss her immediately. the paranoid Deathworlder seeing threats everywhere. But if she was right, Kira left Sector 7 Gamma and sealed the door behind her. She needed more information. She needed to understand what she was dealing with. She made her way to the Academy's central database terminal. Her student access allowed her to search biological records. She pulled up everything they had on Valdris specimens: domestication history, behavioral studies, genetic profiles. She read for 2 hours, cross-referencing and comparing, and slowly a picture began to form. The Valdris had been domesticated 12,000 years ago, but the domestication had happened on a world with minimal predators. The species had never developed the kind of defensive behaviors that Earth animals showed. They had never needed to be afraid, except the specimen in Sector 7 Gamma was not from the main Valdris breeding populations. According to the intake records, it had been collected from a frontier world, a colony established only 300 years ago, a world that had imported various species, including some Earth species, a world where Valdris would have encountered real predators for the first time in 12,000 years. Evolution could work quickly when the pressure was strong enough. Kira had learned that in school on Earth, studying organisms in polluted zones, creatures adapting to human-altered environments in just generations, 300 years, dozens of Valdris generations, living alongside species that might hunt them. What if the specimen in Sector 7 Gamma was not like other Valdris? What if it had re-evolved the predatory features that its ancestors had lost? What if the retractable claws and camouflage were not vestigial at all? Kira stared at the screen. She could take this to Administrator Quelm. She could explain her theory, but she had no proof. Just suspicion, and a disturbed dust pattern and a feeling in her gut that had been shaped by surviving on a world that punished the careless. She closed the database terminal and stood up. She would need to watch Sector 7 Gamma. She would need to gather evidence because if she was right, Professor Velix had not disappeared. He had been taken. 3 days after Professor Velix disappeared, Dr. Thornweave vanished from the hydroponics laboratory. Kira heard about it in the morning. The same gentle alarm, the same soft announcement. Another instructor gone. Another impossible disappearance. Another sealed room that should have been safe. The panic that had been simmering beneath the surface of the academy finally boiled over. Students refused to leave their quarters. Faculty members demanded answers. Security increased patrols, but what good were patrols when people disappeared from locked rooms? Kira had spent the past 3 days watching Sector 7 Gamma, whenever she could slip past security. She had documented the Valdris's behavior, noting how it moved when it thought no one was watching, how it tested the strength of its enclosure, how its eyes tracked the few researchers who entered to collect samples, but she had not seen it leave its enclosure. She had not found evidence of how it could have taken Professor Velix. Now Dr. Thornweave was gone too, and the hydroponics lab was on the opposite side of the station from the biodome facility. The Valdris could not have crossed that distance without being seen by someone or caught on security footage, unless she was wrong. Unless she had let her Deathworld paranoia convince her of a threat that did not exist. Kira sat in her quarters and stared at her notes. She had filled pages with observations, theories, behavioral patterns, all of it worthless if she could not connect the disappearances to an actual threat. Her communicator chimed. A message from Administrator Quelm. All students were to report to the main auditorium immediately. Mandatory attendance. The auditorium was massive, designed to hold the entire academy population. Kira found a seat near the back, away from the other students. She noticed that many of them looked exhausted. Fear had kept them awake. Administrator Quelm appeared on the stage. He was not alone. Security Chief Harmon stood beside him, her chitinous form rigid with tension. She was an armored, a species known for their physical durability and tactical thinking. If anyone could solve this, it should be her. Students and faculty, Quelm began. His voice was strained. I will not insult your intelligence by pretending the situation is under control. 2 of our instructors have disappeared under impossible circumstances. We have reviewed every second of security footage. We have scanned every centimeter of this station. We have found nothing. A murmur ran through the crowd. Fear had a sound, Kira realized. It was the rustling of bodies shifting uncomfortably, the whisper of worried voices. the rapid breathing of species that had never encountered real danger before. "We are implementing a full lockdown," Security Chief Harmon said. Her voice was sharp and clear. "No one is to move through the station alone. All research areas are sealed until further notice. We are bringing in external investigators. We will find answers. What about our families?" Someone shouted from the crowd. "What if we want to leave?" "Transport ships are being arranged," Quelm said. "Any student who wishes to return home may do so. However, I urge you to remain calm. This station is one of the safest facilities in the galaxy. We will resolve the situation." The meeting continued, but Kira stopped listening. Her mind was racing. 2 disappearances, both from supposedly secure locations. Both instructors who had taught xenobiology. Both people who worked directly with specimen samples. She pulled out her datapad and accessed the station directory. She searched for the list of xenobiology faculty. Professor Velix, Dr. Thornweave, Commander Braskeen, Dr. Yallow, Professor Hint. 5 instructors total. 2 already gone. Her hands felt cold. If there was a pattern, the next target would be another xenobiology instructor. The assembly ended. Students filed out of the auditorium in nervous clusters. No one walked alone. Kira moved against the flow, heading toward the faculty offices. She found Commander Braskeen in his office, reviewing data on multiple screens. The arthropod instructor looked up when she entered, his compound eyes reflecting her image 1,000 times. "Miss Chen," he said. His mandibles clicked with what might have been surprise or annoyance. "You should not be here. The faculty area is restricted. You are in danger," Kira said bluntly. "So are Dr. Yallow and Professor Hint. Whatever is taking instructors will come for you next." Braskeen's antennae twitched. "That is a bold claim. Do you have evidence?" 2 instructors have disappeared. Both taught xenobiology. Both worked with specimen samples. You fit that pattern. Many faculty members fit that pattern, Braskeen said. He turned back to his screens, dismissing her. "Security is handling the investigation. You should return to your quarters." "The security footage shows nothing because whatever is doing this is not moving through normal space," Kira said. She was speaking quickly now, the words tumbling out as the pieces finally connected in her mind. The specimens in the biodome and hydroponics, they were collected from different worlds. What if something came with them, something that exists partially outside our normal perception? Braskeen went very still. "That is impossible. All specimens go through rigorous quarantine protocols." "Protocols designed by people from safe worlds," Kira said. "People who classify dangers based on what they can see and measure. What if there is a type of organism that your instruments cannot detect?" "You are grasping at shadows, Miss Chen." But Braskeen's voice had changed. There was uncertainty in it now. "I need access to the import records," Kira said, "for all specimens brought to the station in the past year. I need to see where they came from and what quarantine procedures were used. That information is classified. 2 people are missing." Kira's voice rose. 2 people who worked with your specimens. You could be next. Do you want to wait and see if I am right? Braskeen stared at her with his 1,000 eyes. Then he turned to his terminal and began typing. "This is highly irregular. If you are wrong, if I am wrong, I get expelled for paranoia," Kira said. "If I'm right, we might save lives." The data appeared on one of the screens. Hundreds of specimen acquisitions, each with detailed records of origin, collection method, and quarantine process. Kira scanned through them quickly, looking for patterns. Most specimens came from established colonies on classified worlds. Class 1 and Class 2 biomes. Low danger. Standard quarantine. Nothing unusual, but then she found it. 3 months ago. A sample shipment from a frontier mining outpost. The world was unclassified, surveyed only by automated probes. The mining company had requested biological assessment of the native ecosystem to determine safety for human workers. Wait, human workers? Kira felt her blood run cold. She pulled up the world survey data. Classification pending. Preliminary assessment suggests Class 9 to Class 11 environment. Extreme danger. Not recommended for colonization. A death world. Nearly as dangerous as Earth itself. Who approved this collection? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Braskeen leaned closer to the screen. Professor Velix. He was researching adaptive evolution in extreme environments. Of course he was. Professor Velix, who had called her paranoid. Who had smuggled samples from a death world onto a station full of people who had no concept of real danger. What specimens were in that shipment? Kira asked. Brass Keen pulled up the manifest. Soil samples, water samples, several preserved plant specimens, and one live sample listed as unknown aerial organism, mass approximately 200 grams, non-aggressive behavior observed. Where is that live specimen now? Kira asked. Brass Keen typed rapidly. His antennae went flat against his head, a sign of extreme distress in his species. Sector 7 Gamma, released into the biodome for behavioral observation. The same sector where Professor Velix had disappeared. We need to evacuate the biodome facility immediately, Kira said. And we need to find Dr. Yallow and Professor Hint right now. But even as she said it, an alarm began to sound throughout the station. Not the gentle wellness alarm. This was harsh, urgent, designed for actual emergencies. Brass Keen pulled up the security feed. The screen showed the training simulation rooms on the lower level. The rooms where Commander Brass Keen himself had been scheduled to conduct a practical exam that afternoon. The rooms where he would have been right now, if Kira had not come to his office. The security feed showed figures moving through the simulation rooms. Students running. And something else. Something that flickered in and out of visibility on the cameras. Something that moved wrong, like reality itself was glitching around it. Phase displacement, Brass Keen whispered. It exists partially out of normal space. That is why it does not appear on sensors. That is why it can pass through walls. They watched as the thing moved through the simulation room. It approached one of the figures. The person turned, seemed to see it, tried to run. The creature flickered and the person disappeared. Gone. Just like Professor Velix. Just like Dr. Thornweave. How many specimens were released from that shipment? Kira asked. Brass Keen checked the records. His mandibles clattered with fear. 3 live organisms. 1 in the biodome. 1 in the hydroponics lab. 1 in the training simulation rooms. 3 creatures. 3 disappearances. And 2 more instructors still out there unprotected, unaware. Lock down this office, Kira said. She was already moving toward the door. Find Dr. Yallow and Professor Hint, warn them. Tell them to get to the security center. Do not let anyone go anywhere alone. Kira raided the maintenance storage lockers first. The station staff kept them well stocked with tools for repairs, but they had never imagined someone might need them as weapons. She took a plasma cutter, a heavy wrench, industrial-strength adhesive, a coil of steel cable, and a portable welding unit. The weapons felt crude in her hands, but they were better than nothing. The security center was in chaos when she arrived. Screens showed students and faculty huddled in locked rooms throughout the station. Security Chief Harmon was directing teams, but her movements had the jerky uncertainty of someone operating beyond their experience. Her species might be tactically brilliant when facing conventional threats, but invisible phase-shifted predators were not covered in the training manuals. Miss Chen, Harmon said when she saw Kira's improvised arsenal. What do you think you are doing? Hunting, Kira said simply. She spread a station map across an empty console. The creatures are from a Deathworld. They hunt by moving between normal space and some kind of phase-shifted dimension. That is why your sensors cannot track them consistently, but they have to return to normal space to attack. That is when they are vulnerable. And how do you know this? Harmon demanded. Because I come from a Deathworld too. Kira marked 3 locations on the map. These are where attacks have happened. Biodome Sector 7 Gamma, Hydroponics Lab, Training Simulation Rooms. 3 locations, 3 creatures. They are territorial. Each one has claimed a hunting ground. Commander Brass Keen appeared on one of the communication screens. He was in a sealed office with Dr. Yallow and Professor Hint. Both instructors looked terrified. Security Chief, Miss Chen's theory is correct, Brass Keen said. I have reviewed the specimen data. The organisms are from a world classified as extreme threat level. They evolved to hunt prey that could detect normal predators. Their phase shifting is a hunting adaptation. Then how do we stop them? Harmon asked. Kira studied the map. We cannot chase them. They move through walls and between dimensions. We need to make them come to us. We need bait. Absolutely not, Harmon said. I will not authorize using personnel as bait. The missing people are not dead, Kira said. She had been thinking about this since seeing the security footage. If the creatures wanted to kill, we would have found bodies. Instead, people just disappear. I think they are storing prey somewhere in the phase-shifted space, keeping them alive for later. That is what ambush predators do. They cache their food. Professor Hint's voice came through the speakers. He was elderly, his skin translucent with age. That means Velix and Thornweave might still be rescued. If we act quickly, Kira said. But the creatures are getting bolder, more aggressive. That means they are either still hungry or establishing dominance. Either way, they will hunt again soon. An alarm screamed from one of the security monitors. The screen showed the medical bay. Something was moving through the corridors nearby, visible only as a distortion in the air, like heat shimmer. It is heading for the medical bay, Harmon said. There are patients there, immobile, easy targets. Kira was already running. She grabbed her makeshift weapons and sprinted toward the medical bay. Behind her, she heard Harmon shouting orders, but Kira did not wait for security teams. Every second mattered. The medical bay corridors were empty. Patients had been moved to secure rooms, but the medical staff were still there, trapped by the lockdown. Kira could hear their voices behind sealed doors, frightened and confused. She felt it before she saw it. A change in air pressure. A subtle wrongness in the way light moved. Her Deathworld instincts screamed a warning, and she dove sideways just as something flickered into view where she had been standing. The creature was like nothing in any database. Its body phased in and out of visibility, never fully present. She caught glimpses of an elongated form, multiple limbs, compound eyes that refracted light in impossible angles. It was beautiful and terrible, and it was looking at her with the cold calculation of a predator that had found new prey. Kira rolled to her feet and activated the plasma cutter. The tool was designed for metal, but heat was heat. She slashed at the creature. The blade passed through empty air as it phased out of normal space, but it had to return. It had to materialize to attack. Kira watched the shimmer in the air, tracking the creature's movement. On Earth, she had hunted animals in dense forests where sight was useless. She had learned to read the environment, to feel the presence of living things through changes in sound and airflow. The creature circled her, testing her responses. It was intelligent, careful. It had learned that the other prey in this station did not fight back, but Kira was different. She waited. Patient, letting her breathing steady. Becoming still the way prey became still on Earth. Making the predator commit to an attack. The shimmer moved closer, closer. She could feel it now, a pressure against her skin, the electrical charge of something forcing itself between dimensions. The creature materialized directly in front of her, limbs extending to grab. Kira activated the plasma cutter and drove it forward. The blade bit into solid flesh. The creature shrieked, a sound that seemed to come from multiple dimensions at once. It phased out immediately, but blood remained, hissing and steaming on the floor. Kira pressed her advantage. She pulled out the industrial adhesive and sprayed it in a wide arc. The chemical was designed to bond metal instantly. If the creature tried to phase while coated in it, the adhesive might anchor part of it to normal space. The shimmer appeared again, more cautious now. It circled wider, looking for an opening. Kira kept moving, keeping her back to the wall, denying it the chance to attack from behind. Then she heard the sound, a low humming coming from deeper in the medical bay. Another shimmer appeared at the end of the corridor. Then a third, all three creatures. They had responded to the first one's distress call. Kira felt fear spike through her, but she forced it down. Fear was information on a death world. It told you when you were in danger. But panic got you killed. She needed a new plan. Fighting three phase-shifted predators at once was suicide. But she had something they wanted. She was mobile prey, alert and fighting back. She was interesting. "Come on," she said aloud, backing toward the corridor that led to the cargo bay. "You want to hunt?" "Let's hunt," she ran, not in panic but in control, measuring her speed. Fast enough to trigger chase instincts, slow enough that they could follow. The creatures pursued, their shimmer forms flowing through the corridors like oil on water. Kira had studied the station layout obsessively since arriving. She knew every shortcut, every maintenance tunnel, every sealed room. She led the creatures through a winding path, forcing them to commit to the chase. The cargo bay was massive, designed to hold supply shipments for the entire station. It was also equipped with external airlocks for direct loading from transport ships. Kira burst through the cargo bay doors and immediately began sealing them behind her. The heavy blast doors were meant to contain decompression events. They were solid metal, several feet thick. The creatures phased through the doors as if they were not there. Of course they did. Walls meant nothing to them. But Kira had counted on that. She ran to the main airlock control panel and began the override sequence. Alarms blared immediately. The system was designed to prevent accidents, to warn everyone before opening the airlock to space. The creatures seemed to understand. They rushed forward, materializing fully to attack before she could complete the sequence. Kira grabbed the steel cable she had taken from maintenance. She had fashioned it into a crude whip, weighted at one end with a heavy wrench. She swung it in a wide arc, and the weight caught one of the creatures as it materialized. The impact sent it sprawling, but the other two were on her. Limbs grabbed at her arms, her legs. The touch burned like ice and fire simultaneously, as if they were trying to pull her into the phase-shifted space with them. Kira activated the welding unit in her free hand and pressed it against the nearest creature. The tool burned at 3,000 degrees. The creature screamed and released her, phasing out of normal space. But the other creature tightened its grip. Kira felt herself beginning to shift, her body becoming unstable, flickering between dimensions. She could see the phase-shifted space now, a gray void filled with cocoons. Inside the cocoons were people. Professor Velix, Dr. Thornweave, others she did not recognize, all alive, all trapped in suspended animation. With her last solid grip on normal space, Kira slammed her hand down on the airlock control panel. She pressed the emergency override, the one that required a physical presence to confirm, because no one should ever open an airlock without explicit intention. The outer doors opened, the cargo bay decompressed explosively. Air rushed out into the void of space, and everything not secured to the floor went with it, including the creatures. They tried to phase out, to escape into their shifted dimension, but the pressure differential was too fast, too violent. They tumbled through the airlock, their forms flickering and distorting, and Kira had been ready. She had wrapped the steel cable around her waist and anchored it to a support beam before starting the sequence. The cable went taut and she slammed against the floor, holding on with every ounce of her Deathworld strength as the station's atmosphere tried to drag her into space. The dimensional specialists worked for 18 hours straight. They set up equipment in the medical bay, scanning for traces of the phase-shifted space where the missing people were trapped. Kira stood with them, describing what she had seen in those brief moments when the creature had pulled her between dimensions. The gray void, the cocoons, the feeling of being suspended outside normal time. Dr. Yallo, a quantum physicist with expertise in dimensional theory, listened carefully to every detail. Her species experienced time differently than most, perceiving multiple moments simultaneously. If anyone could find a way to reach the trapped victims, it was her. The creatures created a pocket dimension, Dr. Yallo explained as she calibrated her equipment. A space adjacent to ours but not fully connected. They stored their prey there in a state of suspended animation. When you expelled the creatures into space, you disrupted the anchors maintaining that pocket. We have perhaps 20 hours before it collapses completely. Can you reach them? Security Chief Harmon asked. If we can establish a stable connection, yes. Dr. Yallo adjusted a complex array of sensors. But we need a dimensional anchor point, something that has existed in both spaces and can serve as a bridge. Everyone looked at Kira. I was only partially shifted, Kira said slowly. I was touching one of the creatures when it tried to pull me through. Does that make me an anchor? Potentially, Dr. Yallo said. Your cellular structure may retain quantum signatures from the exposure. It would be dangerous, however. If the pocket dimension collapses while you are connected to it, I would collapse with it, Kira finished. She took a breath. Do it. They wired her to the equipment. Sensors attached to her skin, monitoring her quantum state. Dr. Yallo explained the process, but most of it went over Kira's head. Something about forcing resonance between dimensional frequencies and using her bioelectric field as a guide. The procedure began. Kira felt a pulling sensation, like falling and rising at the same time. The world around her began to flicker. She could see the medical bay, but she could also see that gray void, the space between spaces where the creatures had stored their prey. I can see them, Kira said, her voice sounding distant even to her own ears. Professor Velix, Dr. Thornweave, there are others too. At least 7 people total. Can you reach them? Dr. Yallo asked. Kira tried to move in the phase-shifted space, but it was like moving through thick water. Every action required immense effort. She pushed forward, forcing herself toward the nearest cocoon. Professor Velix, still alive, his crystalline body dim but intact. She touched the cocoon. It felt like touching frozen electricity, but the contact created a connection, and through the equipment in the medical bay, Dr. Yallow could now detect Professor Velix's location. "Got him," Dr. Yallow said. "Initiating extraction." The pocket dimension shuddered. Kira felt reality twist around her. Then Professor Velix's cocoon began to dissolve, pulled back into normal space by Dr. Yallow's equipment. They repeated the process 7 times. Each extraction weakened the pocket dimension further. Kira felt herself being pulled deeper into the gray void with each attempt. But she held on, focusing on the faces of the people trapped here, refusing to let them remain lost. Dr. Thornweave, a graduate student. 2 maintenance workers, a visiting researcher, a security officer, all of them pulled back into normal space, unconscious but alive. "That is everyone," Kira said. She tried to return to normal space herself, but the pocket dimension was collapsing. It wrapped around her like a closing fist. "Kira, you need to let go of the connection." Dr. Yallow's voice came from very far away. "The dimension is destabilizing." "I am trying," Kira said through gritted teeth. But something was holding her. The pocket dimension was failing, and it wanted to take something with it. Conservation of energy or mass or something. Dr. Yallow had warned about this. Then she felt hands grab her. Real solid hands. She looked back and saw Professor Velix barely conscious but standing. He had wrapped his crystalline appendages around her arm, anchoring her to normal space. "You saved us," his chiming voice said. "Allow me to return the favor." Others joined him. Dr. Thornweave using his plant-based roots to grip the floor and hold the chain of people. The security officer adding her strength. The maintenance workers, their species built for heavy labor. They pulled together, human and alien working as one, and slowly Kira felt herself slip back into normal space. The gray void released her with a final shudder, and then it was gone, collapsed into nothingness. Kira fell to the medical bay floor, surrounded by the people she had saved. Medical teams rushed forward, but she waved them off. She was exhausted, battered, but whole. Administrator Quelm arrived an hour later. He stood in the medical bay looking at the rescued victims, at the equipment that had made their recovery possible, and at Kira, who sat on a medical bed refusing treatment until everyone else had been checked. "Miss Chen," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. We all do." Kira shrugged, too tired for anger. "You did not know. We should have known." This was Professor Velix, his crystalline form refracting the medical bay lights. He moved slowly, still recovering from his ordeal. "You told me the Valdris specimen was dangerous. You told me the containment protocols were inadequate. You assessed every threat correctly, and we dismissed you as paranoid." "Because I come from a death world," Kira said. "Because I see dangers you cannot." "Because you are trained to see dangers we do not," Velix corrected. "That is not paranoia. That is expertise." An investigation was launched immediately. The results were damning. Professor Velix had indeed smuggled specimens onto the station, bypassing quarantine protocols in his eagerness to study organisms from extreme environments. The phase-shifted creatures had been listed as harmless aerial organisms because they had appeared harmless in brief observations. No one had considered that they might be juvenile forms or that they might be incredibly patient hunters. The Valdris in Sector 7 Gamma was also re-evaluated. Kira had been correct. The specimen had re-evolved predatory traits during its population's time on a frontier world with real predators. It was not dangerous by Earth standards, but by civilized galaxy standards, it was a threat. 2 weeks after the incident, Kira was called before the Academy Board. She expected expulsion. She had violated lockdown orders, stolen equipment, caused a decompression event that had damaged station infrastructure. By any reasonable standard, she should be sent home. Instead, she found Administrator Quelm, Security Chief Harmon, Professor Velix, Dr. Thornweave, and Commander Brass Keen, all waiting for her. Professor Velix looked particularly uncomfortable, his crystalline body showing stress fractures that had not healed properly. "Miss Chen," Quelm began, "we have reviewed your case extensively, including your failed examinations." Kira felt her stomach drop. Here it came. "Your assessments were not failures," Quelm continued. "They were correct. The Valdris specimen was dangerous. The containment protocols were inadequate. The Tesh swamp samples did pose a biological threat that we failed to detect. Every answer you gave, every threat you identified was accurate by Deathworld standards. Our standards were wrong, Professor Velik said. His voice was quiet, lacking its usual certainty. We have been evaluating dangers based on civilized world parameters for so long that we forgot there are other types of threats. Other ways of seeing. You tried to teach us and we called you paranoid. We are implementing changes, Security Chief Harmon said. New quarantine protocols. Revised threat assessment procedures. Enhanced security measures, all based on Deathworld principles. Commander Brasskeen clicked his mandibles. We are also creating a new department. Deathworld Survival Studies. We need someone to develop the curriculum, to train security personnel and researchers in recognizing threats that our instruments cannot detect. We would like to offer you the position, Quelm said. Lead consultant with a full research stipend and teaching authority. You would also continue your studies, of course, but we suspect you have much to teach us as well. Kira stared at them. You want me to teach survival to species that have never had to survive anything? Yes, Velik said simply. Because that ignorance nearly killed us. And if it can happen here, in one of the most secure facilities in the galaxy, it can happen anywhere. We need to learn. We need someone who understands that the universe is more dangerous than we have allowed ourselves to believe. Kira thought about it. She thought about Earth, where children learn to identify venomous creatures before they learn to read, where people understood that nature was not gentle or fair, that survival required constant vigilance, where humanity had climbed to the top of the food chain through intelligence, adaptability, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. She thought about the students here, species that had forgotten what danger felt like, that built their entire civilization on the assumption that the universe was fundamentally safe. They needed to remember, not to make them fearful but to make them prepared. I accept, Kira said, but I have conditions. My first lesson will be mandatory for all xenobiology students, and Professor Velix will attend as a teaching assistant. Velix made a sound like breaking glass, which might have been a laugh. Agreed, I suspect I have much to learn.